My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Hey, community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I actually just jumped off a webinar with ECC Essentials with Halcyon, the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. So if you have not checked them out, make sure to do so. I believe they have the ECC Essentials as a podcast, as well as being able to watch it on your YouTube channel. But it really is just a 30-minute or so conversation that Halcyon facilitates about so many different things. We specifically talked about our hiring process. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's one of the big reasons that I created the Raspy Dispatcher, was to fill some gaps in regards to information being provided on the role of a 911 dispatcher. So if you weren't able to tune in live for that webinar, you can watch it back on demand, on replay, whenever you get the opportunity. So definitely check that out ASAP. We got a lot of great things going on today, this week in general. I don't know if you guys were watching me, my stories on Instagram yesterday. We were actually supposed to record this yesterday, and we had some technical difficulties. And funny, 10 minutes before we were about to jump on, my power completely went out. Completely died. My house was black, and then I posted it on my story, and right after I hit send to get it to my story, the electricity turned on. So I'm not saying I'm a wizard, Harry, but I'm saying that it's a possibility. You know, it's out there. So for today's episode, we're bringing on my guests, and you guys have no idea how hard we have worked to make this happen. They have over 7 years of experience in the 911 Dispatcher Center. We met in person at the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. My guest today, Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hey, guys.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Genuinely, we didn't get a chance to talk online yesterday, but 10 minutes before we were going to jump on and record, I was literally sitting here doing notes, and then everything just shut off. Like, literally that 10-minute notification came on my calendar and it went black. And I was like, okay, this is the energy that we're having today. Man, it was rough, but we worked really hard to be able to connect. We got to meet at the Be the Difference conference, had some great conversations there. So I'm so excited to have you on today, and I really appreciate you being willing to jump on.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. And I'll just plug the Denise Amber Lee Foundation too. If you've not been to one of their conferences, if you don't take their classes online, definitely do that.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into public safety.
I am a 30-some-year-old wife and mother. And several years ago, I was in nursing school, had some health issues come up, and I was like, this just isn't going to work out. But I knew that I wanted to be in the community and that I wanted to help the community. And I thought, what would I do if I wasn't in nursing that was going to give back to the community the way that the community had given to me? So a family friend was like, hey, dispatch is hiring. You should definitely apply. You would be perfect. I was like, gosh, I don't know. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm an empath. Like, how would I get through some of the stuff that I know that they have to hear? Mm-hmm. I took a leap of faith and I walked away from something that I had been doing for 14 years and ended up here in public safety doing dispatching, and there's no place I would rather be.
Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. And I've heard this before, talking to folks, in regards to like there being empaths and like really feeling the feelings of our callers and stuff. How was that like for you in the beginning? Was there a learning curve? Did you have to really
Yeah,
teach yourself how to operate in this new line of work?
yeah, because in my previous job, I was in the service industry. So for 14 years, I was faced with people. So there would be times that you heard stuff from people's lives, especially in the later years of my career. I was behind a bar.
Mhm.
And then I worked in a liquor store for many, many years. And
Mhm.
so you get to know those people like their family. And so
Yeah.
they tell you horrible stuff that had happened to them. You become a therapist, but you get to know them. So eventually it becomes okay to show your emotions.
Mm.
That's really not something that we get to do very often
Yeah.
because you're not talking to people on their best days. You're talking to people on their worst days.
Yeah.
And you can't be breaking down when they're breaking down. You've got to keep it together. So, yeah, I guess in the very beginning, it was something that I had to work really hard at a lot.
Mhm.
But over the last 7 years, I've become accustomed to making sure that I can get off the phone before I let my emotions take over. I mean,
Mhm.
I said to you that I've never taken a call that there weren't tears running down my face.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm sure that that happens to a lot of us. You just have to learn how to deal with it and keep yourself calm so that you keep your caller calm, obviously.
It always like surprises me like what calls like trigger that response for me because I feel like they're not the like crazy calls or the like it's always some random call that'll get me. I mean, let's be honest. I cry at every Grey's Anatomy episode. My fiance I cried commercials, okay? Like I'm a sensitive being. I recognize that. But in my line of work, the calls that like get me are kind of random. And is that your experience as well or
Yeah, I mean, I just the other day, if personally, I had the worst call that I've had since being a dispatcher, but it's something that happens a lot. It just hit me the wrong way. Uh,
Mhm.
Hearing the mother and the father on the other end of the phone, I don't know. It was just the guilt that she was feeling in the moment,
Mhm.
and hearing dad try to keep her calm. It just hit me in a way that I couldn't explain. And I left work. And as soon as I shut the car door, I
Mhm.
was like, wow, that's really bothering me in a way that I
Wow.
was expecting it to bother me. But
Yeah.
you that's just part of it. You just sometimes things hit you harder than, and I hate fire calls. That
Mm.
sounds strange, but in my lifetime, I've experienced something traumatic with fire and
Mhm.
lost people we were close to. Um, 3 people at one time, and
Oh.
it was hard. It was tough. So every
Mhm.
time I pick and something's on fire, my heart skips to like a beat or two. But I've
Mhm.
gotten even used to that after 7 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't take my breath quite as much as it did in those first few months when people would say that their house was on fire or that their neighbor's house was on fire or
Mhm.
um I think it's just different for all of us because we've all
Mhm.
experienced things, right? So it different things hit different people different ways. So
Yeah, I mean, we're all human just bringing our own baggage to this line of work, right? I mean, your experience in life is going to allow you to be able to impact the caller differently than my experience in life. So, I mean, I think we definitely have to remember to lean on that. Like, we are people as well. We've experienced things that our callers have experienced. I think sometimes there is that little bit of a disconnecting in the center. I mean, we're all sarcastic. We're all just trying to make it through this 12-hour shift. But there are a bunch of just real people in this world, in these centers, in these rooms who have been victims of domestic violence, victims of other crimes, have had abusive family, like any call that we've taken, there might be someone in the room who has experienced that in some way, shape, or form in their lives that we're not privy to. And I think we need to remember that as well, in our centers, and remember to give folks a little grace there too.
Absolutely, because you just never know. Like you said, we could all be sitting in the room and we have no idea that whatever call somebody's taken, it really affects the person that's at the console next to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's just part of being a family too. And that's something dispatch that people can't take away from us. That, of course, I've been, like I said, my last job experience was 14 years. So those people are also family.
Yeah.
But this is kind of family because you go through some hard stuff with these people. And you know that if you pick up the phone and call them in the middle of the night, that you can absolutely count on these people to be there and to understand the way that you're feeling. So
I actually just sat in on a good friend of mine, Ryan, 911 Training Institute, Ryan Dedman's peer support class at the Arizona State Conference. And one of the tools that they give, it's a very very beginner process to peer support, and they have more courses that you can dive into. But one of the things that he said is like, when we're passing each other, switching shifts, hey, how you doing? Like finding different ways to ask that question, like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being your worst, 1 being your best, like whatever that looks like what number you are. And people being able to say, well, 10's my worst. I'm a 9, and then being like, oh, do you want to talk about why you're a 9? And then having the option to say yes or no. So like creating this environment where we don't have to just say we're okay, but if we're not okay, like we also don't have to talk about it, but at least everyone's kind of in the room aware about where everyone is and opening the door to having more vulnerable conversations with our people if they're not having the best day, so I thought it was really interesting.
I just reached out after that last call that really bothered me to our director and to our she just got put into a new role. She was our training coordinator in our TAC, and she's now kind of just over dispatch overall. So she's dispatch's supervisor. So she's over the dispatch supervisors and all of us and disciplinary stuff. And I said, hey, listen, we tried to start a peer support group before COVID, and then COVID changed everything about
Ain't that the truth?
America. So I knew who I could reach out to, and I'm open. I'm an open in my personal life and my work life. So it doesn't bother me to come to you and say, hey, I've had a bad day, or hey, this hit me some kind of way. But not everybody's as open as I am. So I went back to them and I said, hey, listen, I'll go myself and take the Healthy Dispatchers course. I'll pay. I will, whatever I need to do to help get this up and off the ground, because I think it's so important that we are investing in our people, that we're making sure that our people are okay. Because if we're not making sure that they're okay, then our center suffers, because the people are the backbone of a center. Because if the computers go down and the radios go down and the phones go down, you still have people left. And at the end of the day, you're going to find a way to take 911 calls.
Yeah.
And people are going to be the ones that are doing that. So you have to make sure your people. So I'm glad that you spoke about the 911 Institute. I'll absolutely look into that and pass that information.
Yeah. I mean, and every agency should have a peer support foundation as a department, right? But like at the end of the day, we in our centers, we got to take care of ourselves, like we if me and Liz are in a center together, like we're going to be the first line to be able to help each other. Like, yes, our departments, our supervisors, our XYZ should do things to validate us, to support us, all those good things, of course. But if no one's coming to save us, we have to save ourselves. Like we have to be responsible for creating these environments in our centers. Even if it's as simple as bringing some plants in that thing to liven it up, like it doesn't have to be this huge hoopla either. It can just be being consistent, showing up for each other, and just creating a good environment in your center until everything else falls in line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And our center is really good about showing appreciation and doing things for us. And they just redid our quiet room like 2 years ago.
Awesome.
A nice space to go to when you need a minute
Yeah.
or for your whatever. They just planted flowers for the summer outside. We got new picnic furniture last summer.
Awesome.
But they do things to show us appreciation.
Mhm.
I make sure that they're the younger generation and the older generation who's a little less open about mental health side of our job. Let's be real. Veteran dispatcher, you've been carrying around 20, 30 years worth of terrible calls, and chances are you're not talking to anybody about them.
Yeah. Like 20 years ago, you didn't want to hear about it. Well, I got to tell you about it now, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we all across the board are understanding that there is somebody that cares enough to say, hey, I'll spend 30 minutes with you on the phone. Need me to make you lunch? Want to take a walk at the park?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you really want to do that you want me to go do with you? We just need to know that we're there for each other in a way that other people can't be. Like, I love my husband dearly and my husband loves me dearly. But at the end of the day, he doesn't really want to hear that there was a MVA with injuries on the interstate and the gory details of it.
Yeah.
But you need to get that out to somebody. You need to talk about it so that you're not carrying it around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, my trauma doesn't need to be his trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I first started this job, even though it was just a few years ago, mental health still was kind of taboo. Like you just didn't really, you just carried it home with you. Whatever happened, you carried it home. You didn't really talk about it. But during COVID, if I'm being honest, it was rough. I mean, we would work a whole rotation, a whole month, and we would take 2 calls where there had been a cardiac arrest and the person was like 85 years old. Well, you've lived, or the person was 90 some years old and they had just passed away in their sleep. We went to 2 people or 1 person, a couple people in a shift or a rotation to 12 and 13 people for the month.
Yeah.
Or for the day.
Yeah.
Or for a couple days. There was just so much death all at one time. And
yeah.
then my own personal life. My husband was diagnosed with cancer during COVID.
Gosh.
And we had COVID, so we couldn't be, around him when we were sick.
Yeah.
That was it was a lot to carry around. So I was like, I think I need to go talk to somebody. I think I need to understand that I've never been anxious in my whole life. And all of a sudden I'm anxious. I'm worried about anything and I'm panicking over stuff that doesn't even matter at the end of the day. But felt heavier than normal. So I started seeing somebody. But my mom's also a therapist. So therapy's never really been taboo at our house.
Awesome. Yeah, heck yeah.
But it's taboo for some people. We've even lost some people that had almost licked their service, that had almost made it to 30 years. She had 24 years, 25 years. And she was like, the calls are more and more and more every day. And the more calls we get, the worse they are. And I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't imagine carrying around 20 some years worth of trauma and never feeling like I could talk about it. And I'm not saying that was it with her, because I don't know. But she's just from the older generation of dig your heels in and get this done, as opposed to the younger generation who's more open to saying, hey, making me feel some kind of way, or I just want to get across the board for everybody to know that there's somebody willing to talk to you, and you don't have to go to therapy. It can be somebody who sits in the room with you, or who's on another shift that you feel like you can trust, that understands what last night's shift might have been like.
I definitely think there's a shift in the generational, like, the kids, air quotes, talking about mental health. I mean, my fiance's sister just graduated high school, and the language that she uses, in regards to mental health and, certain identities and things like that is so advanced from where I was in high school, so like this is the future, right? Of 911 folks who are going to eventually get into this career or any other career, but, specifically 911 for our sake. These are the expectations they have. They expect for their departments and their jobs and their, realities to acknowledge mental health, to provide resources for it. And we're behind a bit. We're better, we're much better, air quotes, but we're still behind in, advocating for creating, like, every center should have these opportunities and these resources available. We're not quite there yet. But I do think, because I started in 2018, the growth that I've witnessed since 2018 to now is huge. So I can only imagine the growth, that other folks have witnessed in their X amount of years being in this field.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, since I started in 2017, there's definitely been a shift. And I 100% agree with you. The language is completely I have a 14-year-old.
There we go.
The thing says, I'm just like, how do you even know that? You're like,
it's so cool. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't talking like that when I was 14.
Right? And I was talking like that last week. Shoot.
But I also wasn't carrying around a cell phone either.
True.
Everything, all information is readily available for you and I. We were going to the library and checking out dictionaries, and they don't have to do that. All they got to do is grab their cell phone and start looking up stuff, Googling stuff. And that's the other, you don't know what kind of answers they're getting. So if I learned anything, one of the biggest things that I learned at Be the Difference, the conference this year, was in Dominique's class. She said, honesty, you need to be direct and forward when they come in, and you need to discuss their successes and their failures with honesty, and you need to be very direct, and you need to delegate tasks, because that's just the shift in a generational difference between the older people and the younger people. They want instant gratification, and sometimes that's hard, especially doing this. We live a lot in the gray area. We don't necessarily live in a black and white space. So gratification for this job, it's not as immediate sometimes as they want it to be. So it's hard sometimes to make a connection with your older veteran dispatchers and your younger, newer people. And even in training, when you have an older veteran dispatcher training a new hire, the generational differences and the way people learn and the way people scaled success, that's also very different. It's the same. Back in the old day, you either did it or you didn't. And now you've got a lot of room for improving before they're like, okay, that's enough. You just can't do this. Or at least that's what I have seen at our center. When I started, you either did it or you didn't. And in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, they knew whether you were going to get it or you weren't, and you were gone.
Yeah.
Now I feel like sometimes we hold on to them forever and we're almost giving people false hope when they're just not improving.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes that's where Dominique's approach, being direct and setting expectations immediately so that they know what's expected of them, honest with them and upfront, that helps.
Yeah.
Because there's no question of what you expect from them or what you need from them or what you want out of them in a week. I learned a lot at Be the Difference. I feel like, I mean, you go to conferences all the time. I feel like the difference, it was really geared toward dispatchers and and how to connect with your people and how to make a difference in their lives so that they're making a difference in the public's life. If you don't feel validated and you don't feel like you're appreciated, you're not answering the calls so that the public feels your sincerity or your compassion. And then you're losing part of what we're there for in the beginning to begin with. So I feel like I really took away a lot from a lot of classes, learning how to approach the new generation. And we still have people who are veteran dispatchers who are moving. They're moving to new places and they're training again. And then you have an older generation and a younger generation all in the same training class. And you have to learn how to put those people together. That's also hard. Gear one or the other, you have to gear it toward the group of people that you have at hand. And that's why I think that training needs to be flexible. You've got to be flexible, just like we have to be flexible every time we pick up the phone. You can't be the same person on every phone call. A lot of phone calls, you can be really nice and easygoing the whole time. And then, as you know, there are some phone calls that from the time you pick up the phone until the call is over, you got to be very stern or you're not getting anything out of them.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we talked about on this webinar a bit, is that historically we have expected trainees, people who are working at our departments, to adjust to us. Like we were the sought after prize, we being the department, and there's 2 coveted spots, there's 1,000 applicants. Well, the reality is opposite now, for every line of work, from officer to dispatcher to so on and so forth, is there are hundreds of spots and 50 applicants. So the reality has shifted, and yet we haven't shifted completely. We haven't adjusted to that reality. We still think that we're the coveted prize, when it's in reality the applicant is now, it's an applicant's market. It's not a look. If you look at it like a housing market right now, it's a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market, right? Same thing for our departments. Like, it is an applicant's market right now. I can pick and choose. I can figure out what's best. I can bargain. Like, it's an applicant's market. And if we don't shift with that knowledge and we just expect the applicants to be okay with a toxic work environment, be okay with not communicating with them, or with a training program that is just not realistic, we're going to lose people. And if we don't make those changes and adapt to our new reality, our shortages are going to continue. And it doesn't mean that we have to change everything to meet applicants' standards, but we also need to acknowledge the fact that we need these people, and how can we make them want to work here,
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the time, too, a big issue is the hours. Nobody wants to work our hours. And yes, they're hard. They stink sometimes. And like, we work swing shifts. So 12 shifts. So like today, I go back on nights tonight at 7. Well, off yesterday, but this past weekend, I worked 3-day shifts. You get 1 day off.
It's terrible. Yeah.
You go right back to nights. I'm totally used to it, but every month I get a 7-day. So I get a vacation every month.
That's cool. I like that.
And the thought of changing our schedule to suit 2 people who are incoming that are new,
Yeah.
that's hard to swallow.
Yeah. Heck yeah, it is.
You applied for this job. And it said that.
Yeah.
And so guilty of being like, I was here first.
Yeah, we all we love a seniority chart. Like we all got that in us for sure, but I had an interview with Tyrone Kelsey from 911 Training Institute, and I've lived in this reality too. Like, and I tell people, if you're applying for this job, don't expect to get the offer and then like switch your schedule. That's not the reality. They will drop you, they'll be out, but he brought up an interesting point of, why don't we create schedules that meet people's needs, right? So if you're someone who wants to work 5/8 because you want to be home with your family, why don't we create those within our schedule? So I like a 12. I like having 4 days off every other week. Works well for my schedule. I don't have kids, nor do I want them. So my life is going to operate wonderfully for 12s forever. But for someone who has a family, who wants to see their kid grow during daylight hours, maybe an 8-hour schedule is going to work better for them. So I don't know how that would work. I'm not figuring out the schedules, but it's an interesting question of, can we have X amount of 8-hour slots we're trying to fill? Can we have X amount of 10 hours? Like, can we have these ways that people can do work, this job, meet our staffing shortages, and still have the life that they want outside of work?
Yeah.
It's a question. It's something to consider. It's a possibility,
We have a couple part-time spots, and they 11 to 9. So the busy hours during the morning, and it kind of slows down at nighttime. And have one person who works every week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I can't imagine.
No, thank you. That sounds disgusting.
Day shift, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There would be no amount of money on the face of the planet that would dispatch Monday through Friday. No way.
But it sounds like it works for them, right? Like, they love it. They enjoy.
Yep. Ooh. She's got one's in high school, one's in elementary school, and are playing sports. So it worked for her.
Yeah. And here's the thing. The reality is, if we enjoy our work, right? A, we enjoy what we do. B, we enjoy our schedule. We're going to show up more, right? Like, think about every time that you've like blown off work or called out or took a mental health day. It's because something isn't connecting, right? Like something, I don't feel bad about calling this off because I am not happy with what's happening with the employer, right? And I bet like she loves that schedule. She gets to go to work. She gets to go see her kids. She probably shows up more often than someone who wouldn't like their schedule, right? Like, it's a retention thing. It all comes back to meeting people where they need to be met, and they're going to show up for you.
Yep. And she's a long-term employee, so it worked.
Yeah. And
keeping her somebody who's fully trained, and you're not having to look for somebody else.
Yeah. And those are the questions we need to ask. Like, how and of course there's like red tape, HR stuff, unions, and all this, Sure. And you might have to work a little harder to make things happen, but we can try new things and see if it'll work. I mean, we can't be afraid to try. There are centers that are reporting 70% vacancy rates, and we're over here not wanting to try something new. Like, it's the math ain't mathin', okay? And I cheated through all my math classes, so we gotta do better. Well, one of the things that we discussed in person was just kind of this idea of teamwork in our dispatch centers, right? And effectively communicating with each other. What are some tips or tricks or advice you have for dispatchers who are working in these centers, trying to be a good teammate?
I know early on, I just felt like a fish out of water. I feel like there's a huge gap between when you're coming out of training and you're going to the floor. And I don't know about other centers, but at our center, there's training, call taking, and then once you've mastered call taking, you move on to dispatching because we do all of it at the same time. So I answer 911 calls and I dispatch all at the same time. So, but we want to make sure that you can do the call taking part before we throw the radio and the CAD and the phone and everything at you.
That's the way I was trained. Yeah.
We tried where we start them on the radio dispatching and then we add in call taking, and we've noticed that that really works too, because then they're used to what the officers ask, so they better questions when they're call taking. But either way, you're a fish out of water. These people have already made connections. They know each other's families. They know what each other likes to drink when they come to work.
Yeah.
Where they're going to order lunch from. They can kind of predict that kind of stuff. And you don't know anything about anybody. So for me, I just tried to insert myself in conversations where I felt like they were all the room was talking. I would talk. I didn't sit in the corner. I made sure that I was engaging too. And I know that that's not easy for everybody, because not everybody is super outgoing or confident enough to just jump into people's conversations when they don't really know people. I also try to make an effort when people are in training that I always shake hands with them the first time I ever meet them. That I'm there when I speak to them and I ask how they're doing or how they think it's going. That way, there's always at least someone that they can come and find, and they know that they've got a connection with. And then, because I feel like your communication starts from the moment that you get hired until you leave. And the way that you present yourself, just like with anywhere else in life, that follows you through dispatch. And whether we want to admit it or not, we're all creatures of habit, and we all judge people on first impressions. So I feel like our communication, we need to make sure that we're including people in private conversations so that when it comes to working professionally together, there's trust. If you're never speaking to me and I'm spending 12 hours by myself, I probably don't have very towards you, and I'm probably not going to want to work with you. But if we build relationships and we foster healthy relationships, of course our working relationships are going to be better. So I feel like we have to really work on making everybody feel included. I mean, we're not all going to like the same things. We're not going to have the same interests. As long as we're including people in conversations and we are making sure that today we talk about plants and tomorrow we talk about music when the phones aren't ringing, then everybody feels like a team. Everybody feels like they're a part of something so that we work better together.
Yeah. And there's nothing worse than being a trainee. You know, you can't look at your phone. You can't watch Netflix. You can't, you have to be very intentional with like learning the whole time. And there's nothing worse than spending 12 hours just consuming and no one like actually talking to you or including you, or, like that's a really hard time in training. Because you feel like an idiot half the time. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't put my left foot in front of my right. Like, it's really a rough, like, there's no other training experience, I think, like being a dispatcher. And that's one of the things that a lot of people like ask about in my private Facebook group of Let's Talk Dispatch when they're asking for feedback is like, I feel like I don't know anything. I feel like one day I'm doing great, the next day I'm not. Like, that is just the reality of this training, is because it's such a feedback driven critiquing process. Like, if me and you jumped on and had someone listen to our stuff right now, even though we're fully trained, there would be feedback to give. Like, you can always do something better. You could always ask a question different. You can always be better. And that's just, this job is like that. It's so when you're new to it and you're just being critiqued and only hearing that you could have done things better, and then you're sitting in a center and no one's talking to you or no one's like engaging with normal everyday like rhetoric, like it can get really isolating and lonely. And again, why do I want to stay? Like, that's the environment we should be creating, is answering, this is why you want to stay, right? That's how we should be creating these environments, especially for our trainees.
Yeah, I just moved shifts. I just spent days with a new shift. On the same shift for the majority of my time with our district, pretty much all of my time, really. But somebody's out on maternity leave, and I am going to cover her while she's gone because my shift is well staffed and theirs wasn't. So I've moved shifts. Well, I felt like a fish out of, I've been doing this a while. I felt like a fish out of water all weekend.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know their officers' voices. I don't know deputies' voices. So when I was consoles throughout the weekend, I'm like, I don't even know what they're saying.
Yeah, shift change is rough. I'm like, I haven't worked with this officer. What'd they say?
What did he say? Why does he talk so fast? Like somebody's chasing. Why does he key up and sound like he's in a pursuit every time he keys up?
Right? So, they're just going to lunch. It's all good. Like,
and I couldn't understand anything he said all day. And when I was on city, they're much busier. And there's a lot more of them. And so the lead dispatcher on the shift, she was like, tomorrow will be better. I said, gosh, I hope so. So when I went back the next day, it was a little easier because I sat city fire and I backed up the police dispatcher. And I was like, yeah, that was a little day. And then on Sunday, I sat on county. Well, we're from Tennessee, so we're all redneck. We all have really thick accents. Right around with a dip in their mouth. And I'm like, I don't know. Over. But shift, because there's not that many of them, knew who it was keying up. Even when you are seasoned and you move shifts or you work overtime, you go to another shift, you still feel kind of like a fish out of water. And sometimes really the people, it's the work environment. Our work environment changes so much and so often and so fast, and being brand new and getting used to that. And if you've never done anything like this before, and you don't know anybody in emergency services, you go from talking like a normal person in codes, and then you're ordered at the Burger King and you're like, they ask you if that's your order and you say 10-4 to them because you're
I'm still trying to teach my fiance my code. She's not buying in, but she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I already told you what this means. You're in training right now. What's happening? I should be able to speak code to you.
And it's true. It's so to it. It's so repetitive. And when you adjusting to the people that have been there forever and the fast pace and the horrible stuff that you can hear sometimes, the way it goes from being totally silent to the worst of the worst things happening in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
That's really hard to take all in when your brain new and get used to that and adjust to it and adjust to the schedule. That all of it really just starts with building healthy relationships with your shift, with the people that you work with all the time. I mean, you need a healthy relationship with everybody at your center, but specifically the people that you're going to spend working 12 hours at a time with.
Yeah.
You really need to foster those relationships. Remember that it's their birthday. Remember last year in the month of June, they lost somebody, and make sure you put a little card in their mailbox saying, hey, I'm thinking about you this month. Or just remember little things about people that remind them that you care at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because like you and I were saying, we cry when we watch commercials. So if I'm like that and I can come and do our job, there are other people in the room that are the same way. So you have to make sure your people know that you care, even if you're not always having to verbalize that to them.
Yeah.
So I think communicating well and working well together really just starts from the moment a new person comes to a shift. Well, really, the moment you get hired.
Yeah.
Everybody should be making those new people feel welcome and like they can come and approach them if they need to. So, are comfortable.
Yeah, 1,000%. Well, we're coming towards the end of the show here. One of the questions that I always ask everybody is, what advice would you give someone who is considering a career as a dispatcher?
To love it. Put your whole heart in. And if you put your whole heart in and you get there and you don't love it like you thought you would or like you wanted to, get out. Not because you can't do it, but maybe because it's just too much, or maybe it was more than what you thought it would be to begin with. This job takes all of your heart. It takes somebody who's really dedicated to not only providing a service above and beyond what the community thinks we provide, because we're not just secretaries and we don't just answer the phone. We do so much more than that. And I would say love it with all of your heart. Go in with an open mind, because you're going to meet people from all different walks of life. Going to work with people from all different walks of life. And every time that you answer the phone or every time you put your headset on to talk to the men and women on the other side of the radio, you have no idea what happened to them before the transmission comes across. You don't have any idea before their worst day, if they weren't already having a bad day before they had to dial 911. So it's something that you have to do from your heart. It comes from here. And I love it. I'm here for anybody that watches the show. They can reach out at any time. I'd be glad to chat with them back and forth. I do this because I love it. I love our community. I love our responders. Some of them I've never seen before, but my job to do my best from where I sit to make sure at the end of the day we all go home. And the best advice I can give you is go in with an open heart and an open mind and give it your all.
Amazing. Liz, again, thank you so much for coming onto the show, meeting me in person, spending time in person, connecting. It's one of the beautiful things about conferences and being able to see the folks that I connect with virtually online. And I'm glad that we were able to connect again to share this conversation with everyone who tunes in.
Yes, absolutely. And I look forward to listening to this back so I can hear my purple accent.
Oh my gosh, your accent's wonderful.
That's the one thing about my job I do not like, is having to listen to myself on playback.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you. Thank you again. All right, everybody. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Liz's advice about putting your whole heart in, and if it doesn't work out for you, getting out is amazing advice. You know, one of the things that we push here is, of course, the world needs more dispatchers, but we need more dispatchers who enjoy the job. So if you get into this line of work and you give a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the amount of service you provide to that community is worth it. It is appreciated. And no matter what the reason is, you decide to exit at whatever amount of time you decide to exit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's appreciated. We need folks answering these calls for service, but we need folks to be happy in what they're doing. So if you are listening and you're part of your hiring process, consider what changes you can make. How can we make our centers more inclusive, more interesting for someone to want to work here? How can we adjust our realities to meet the needs of the folks we need answering these phones? So if you're interested in coming on to the show, definitely reach out. Head to theraspydispatcher.com. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Dispatch podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, or maybe even submitting your own story, you can do all that and more at theraspydispatcher.com. Until next time, stay raspy.